Hello, English learners, and welcome back to the Level Up English YouTube channel. My name is Michael, and today I'm going to be looking at a WikiHow article. WikiHow is a huge website that you probably have already heard of, and it basically has articles on how you can do pretty much anything. And there are several articles on how to learn English. So my idea today was to go through one of these articles, comment on the tips they give, whether I think, in my experience, they're good pieces of advice or not. And then we can maybe expand on them a little bit as well. If any of you are missing the outside videos, then you have my apologies. I was sick with COVID for a week or two, and because of that, I'm a little bit behind, and I'm trying to kind of catch up on my YouTube videos. But for now, we've got an inside video, but hopefully you can bear with this and have an outside one soon enough. But let's get into it and let's have a look at this first article. So this article I have found first is called How to Learn English Faster. Not just learn, but how to learn English faster. And we've got fun techniques, serious study, and then we've got some do's and don'ts. And I've had a very quick look at this before, but not a very detailed look. So let's have a look in a bit more detail now and talk about it. So fun technique. First of all, a guy reading a newspaper. That doesn't seem so fun to me, you know. It depends on your definition of fun, but I do think this is a common misconception when it comes to language learning in general, that you have to read the news. And I just think it's not true. I think partly the language you get in the news and newspapers is not necessarily everyday language, depending on what you want to do. But if you want to meet people, talk to people on the street, it's not going to be exactly the right, the same language. And for many of us, it's just quite boring. So if you find it boring, then don't read a newspaper. I think that's important to point out first of all. But they do have some good advice. So they said read, read, read. And I'm not going to read everything here, but they basically said reading will help your vocabulary get better, as well as learn grammar and even slang. I agree with this. I think reading is such an underrated practice in language learning. And I think if you can develop a daily reading practice, it can go a long way in helping you improve your vocabulary and understand the structure of sentences better. I do think it's important to read something you enjoy. So they give some options here. They say read comics. That's a good idea. I haven't tried that myself, but I like that. Books you've read before. So if you already know the story, maybe in your native language, you can pick up the book in English. That's a great idea. Newspapers as well. I already spoke about that, but I think basically read something you enjoy. It doesn't have to be boring. Find a topic that you like, find a format that you like, and go with that. I love the pictures here. Like, what could that be? What's going on here? No idea. But number 2 is watch movies. Another fairly good tip. It's all about having fun, isn't it? I do think you have to do a little bit more. I think you have to be quite active in picking up vocabulary and stuff like that. What do they say here? Keep subtitles off. Focus on listening. I think this is an amazing thing to do. If you do keep subtitles on in your native language, it's unlikely that you will learn much from doing that, in my opinion, because the mind is a lazy thing and you'll naturally will want to read in your native language because it's easier and you won't spend much time focusing on the English. It's much harder, but it's a good challenge, and doing so, you will pick up on these sounds more easily and the way that people talk. Number 3 is a strange one. Play MMO games. I haven't come across this specific tip before, but MMO stands for Massive Multiplayer Online, I believe. And it's basically an online game where you can play with people from all around the world, doing quests and things like that. World of Warcraft is a really common example. And yeah, maybe that's good. I'm not sure. I guess it depends on the game. It depends how much speaking you can do and stuff like that. But if you pick the right game, I think that could be a great idea. But I would just say games in general. When I think of my students, especially younger ones, the younger kids who have the best English are the ones who played the most video games. So if you're a parent and you're really strict about your child playing video games, maybe keep that in mind that you can learn a lot from them. Number 4, they've got here to find an online pen pal. Pen pal is a somewhat old-fashioned thing now, writing emails or letters. I would say the more modern version is just finding a language partner. Yeah? I'm sure you can find someone, say in England, for example, who's learning your language, unless you live on an island with 100 speakers of your native language. I'm sure you can find someone if you go on these popular language exchange websites like mylanguageexchange.com. There's many people on there who want to learn your language, and I'm sure you could have some kind of language exchange where you meet on Zoom and talk about your day, talk about your plans, and practice languages together. I think that is a great thing to do. But that's exactly what they said there. So far, we're kind of in agreement here. Just some other tips I've got in addition. Sing songs. Okay, so this is another good tip. I'm not disagreeing as much as I expected I would, actually. But yeah, I think music is another underrated way of learning languages. I think people overlook it because they say, well, it doesn't sound like how people speak. It's not the same, pronunciation and rhythm, and therefore it's not as good. I would say it's still a really good thing to do, and it helps you remember things so easily. Like I remember probably 10 years ago, I started to learn Japanese, and there's a song on YouTube that I found which was Mary Had a Little Lamb, but it was Mary-san no hitsuji, Mary's lamb, basically. And I'm not going to sing it for you now. I'm not going to do that. But I remember the song really clearly in my head and all those words. It's very basic vocabulary, but I still remember it today. So music is really good for memory, helping those words fit into your mind better. And it doesn't have to be music. It doesn't have to be a song. It could just be a sentence in English, and you have to learn to hear the rhythm in a sentence. So, for example, a common phrase could be, how's it going with you today? And see, you can make it somewhat musical if you notice. So you could say, how's it going with you today? How's it going with you today? And if you listen to the ups and the downs of the phrase, you can almost hear the music in every sentence. And doing so, you will remember things more easily. So that's something you could consider as well. So now we've moved on to part 2, serious study. Their next tip for serious study is to write in a journal. Again, I totally agree. I think this is such a great tip. And again, something that many people don't do enough of. So I try my best to do this most days. I'm not perfect, but I try to do it every morning, where I have like a journal or language practice document on my computer. I don't use paper. I'm terrible at writing by hand. But writing is such a great way because it's, apart from speaking, it's the only method of output where you can use what you learn in English and practice it, make sentences, practice new grammar, vocabulary, and it's really good for consolidating that. They do recommend here a daily diary, write about your day. I don't think it should be that limiting. I think you can write about your day, your plans for next week. You've got some different tenses here. But also, this is something I try to do on Level Up English with my students, is we have a writing course where there'll just be a random question to respond to. Tell me your opinion on recycling. What would you do if there was a zombie apocalypse? And then this really encourages you to write more creatively and use more advanced structures too. So it doesn't have to be your plans and what you ate in the week. Make it more complicated if you like. Number 3 is travel to an English-speaking nation. Especially if you are there for a long time. They said at least 3 months will help the most. I don't know why that time specifically. 2.5 months doesn't help. But this has some pros and cons. It is a good point. Traveling to an English-speaking nation can help you a lot. It really can. I found this myself going to Japan. everything around me is in Japanese, and it's so much easier to talk in Japanese when that's the case. If you're more introverted and not outgoing, it does become much harder. So in that case, it may not be the best for you to travel there. You might find you can actually practice English more at home than you can in England or America, let's say. But if you're willing to leave your comfort zone and meet people, I think it's a great thing to do. But as long as you're not using it as an excuse, like, oh, I can't improve my English because I can't go to America, I think that's not a good enough reason, because there's internet, there's books, there's language partners, there's many, many options to get immersion from your home. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit to the do's and don'ts now, because it's quite a long article, so I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. We've got one here. Do work with a small set of words, and don't work from a giant list of vocabulary. I agree with this. I think this is a good point. It's better to go slowly with a few words rather than try to learn and cram so many in at once. So I think that's good advice, but I do think it may not be such a good idea to learn words. I always recommend learning phrases, collocations. So rather than learning like 1 word, 2 word, 3 words on their own, learn the whole phrase. Here's a simple example. Don't learn the word shower. Learn the phrase take a shower. Take a shower, have a shower. Learn these phrases, and it's going to be much more beneficial in the long run, so you don't have to think about the language in words, because if you think about native speakers, we don't think in words, we think in phrases. So it's a really good habit to get into. This one I perhaps don't agree with so much. Do label everything in your home. Put a label on everything around your home, learn the words, and it will teach you to think of the image when you see the word instead of translating everything in your head. So that's a good point, that to avoid translating, but in my experience, labels just don't work. They don't work because, like, if I want to get a coffee, for example, even if it's in English, I'm not going to read the word coffee. I just, make quick coffee, open the cupboard, get coffee, and that's it. I'm not going to spend time reading everything. And I think it's the same that people that put like notes and labels around their desk at home, how often do people really take the time to read those labels? Maybe the act of writing them is helpful, but I think people rarely, almost never read them. So it's, I would say, not so useful. I've tried it a lot in the past. For me, it doesn't work so much. So you might have different results, but that's my opinion. And kind of following on from that, they've got one here about don't use flashcards. Don't use flashcards. And the reason they have is because when you're using a flashcard, you're translating from English to your own language. And that makes it much harder when it comes to speaking, because you're translating in your head all the time. I somewhat agree. I mean, it's possible to get flashcards that use a picture or something like that. I don't think flashcards are too bad in this sense, but I do think it's a good habit to get out of translating. And I think a lot of it is a mental thing. So when you see a word in English, that's a simple one like dog, try to get in the habit of imagining a dog in your head. So rather than thinking of the word for dog in your language, picture that dog in your head. Maybe you will translate it to dog as well, but that image in your head is really important. And I think getting into that habit is the key to avoid translating. I'm going to end here with the final tip, which is don't be afraid to try. I think this is a great tip. If you want to learn quickly, just speak it. Just use your language skills as much as you can. Don't worry about being wrong, making mistakes. If you do not try and you're afraid of mistakes, you're going to be much slower. You're going to progress more slowly. Make mistakes and change your mindset. Learn to love the mistakes. Every mistake you make is one step closer to your goal of becoming fluent, becoming better. So make mistakes. Don't be afraid. No one judges you for mistakes. If anything, people will admire you for trying and putting yourself out there and learning something that is so big, like a new language. So don't be afraid of mistakes. Just try, and you will feel so good about overcoming your shyness or your, more reserved nature, perhaps. But okay, there we go. So I hope you enjoyed that little video looking at WikiHow. As I said, it was much more positive than I expected. I kind of expected, learn grammar, use textbooks, but no, it was actually, for the most part, quite good advice. And I agree with most of their points. I had a few extra tips as well. But let me know what you think. Is there anything more you would add to the list today? What other tips would you give for English learners out there? But anyway, I hope you found this useful. Check out more WikiHow articles if you think they could help. They've got more tips for you. But for now, I'm going to end it here. So thanks for listening and watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.